Uh, Today we're going to start with a read aloud of a story you may have heard before, called The Paper Bag Princess. And the purpose of this is to help you think about archetypes and how they are, or how an author might use them or play with them to create some kind of effect. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you, and then we'll talk about today's goal and review archetypes. Okay, so here we go. This is The Paper Bag Princess by Robert Munsch. Okay, so Elizabeth was a beautiful princess. She lived in a castle and had expensive princess clothes. She was going to marry a prince named Ronald. Unfortunately, a dragon smashed her castle, burnt all her clothes with his fiery breath, and carried off Prince Ronald. And there they go. Elizabeth decided to chase the dragon and get Ronald back. She looked everywhere for something to wear, but the only thing she could find that was not burnt was a paper bag. So she put on the paper bag and followed the dragon. He was easy to follow because he left a trail of burnt forests and horses' bones. Finally, Elizabeth came to a cave with a large door that had a huge knocker on it. She took hold of the knocker and banged on the door. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Well, a princess. I love to eat princesses, but I've already eaten a whole castle today. I'm a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." He slammed the door so fast that Elizabeth almost got her nose caught. Elizabeth grabbed the knocker again and banged on the door again. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Go away. I love to eat princesses, but I've already eaten a whole castle today. I'm a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." "Wait," shouted Elizabeth. "Is it true that you are the smartest and fiercest dragon in the whole world?" "Yes," said the dragon. "Is it true," said Elizabeth, "that you can burn up 10 forests with your fiery breath?" "Oh yes," said the dragon, and he took a huge deep breath and breathed out so much fire that he burned up 50 forests. And there he goes, 50 forests, goodbye. "Fantastic," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath and breathed out so much fire that he burned up 100 forests. "Magnificent," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath, but this time nothing came out. The dragon didn't even have enough fire left to cook a meatball. Elizabeth said, "Dragon, is it true that you can fly around the world in just 10 seconds?" "Why, yes," said the dragon, and jumped up and flew all the way around the world in just 10 seconds. He was very tired when he got back, but Elizabeth shouted, "Fantastic! Do it again!" So the dragon jumped up and flew around the whole world in just 20 seconds. When he got back, he was too tired to talk, and he lay down and went straight to sleep. Elizabeth walked right over the dragon and opened the door to the cave. There was Prince Ronald. He looked at her and said, "Elizabeth, you are a mess. You smell like ashes, your hair is tangled, and you're wearing a dirty old paper bag. Come back when you are dressed like a real princess." It's mean, huh? "Ronald," said Elizabeth, "your clothes are really pretty and your hair is very neat. You look like a real prince, but you are a toad." They didn't get married after all. Okay, so that is the end of our story. Okay, and it's a fantastic story. There's a lot going on here. And my question to you is, how does this story deal with archetypes? So how does the story show archetypes? Okay, how does the story show archetypes? So to answer this, we got to think. So we have to remind ourselves what an archetype is. So an archetype is a pattern. It's a pattern of a character. It's a typical character, right? So it's the kind of character or a kind of character we find in stories. But in this story, what really makes it great is that the characters are not typical. So it's not often where the princess rescues the prince, right? So normally, in many stories, it's the princess that gets rescued, right? Because typically, princesses need to be rescued because they are feeble and weak. But what makes this story great is that we see something more realistic, where the princess, the girl, she's not feeble and weak. She's actually stronger than the prince, right? She outsmarts the dragon, she rescues him, and then says, "You're a toad. I'm not marrying you." And she runs off. She goes on and lives her own life, happily, I'm sure. So in this story, the reason why we read it today is because the archetypes that are typical, right? The patterns of characters that are typical are not followed in this story, right? So that's what makes it good, right? So this story does not follow the usual archetypes that we have in lots of the stories we read, okay? So I want you to remember this story. We're going to come back to it. And it kind of leads us into today's goal, which is to be alert for internal and external quests that the character takes. Okay? So, when we think of quest, all right, if you're not sure what I mean by quest, don't worry. There will be the Ed puzzle you have for today will give you a lot of information about quests. But what I want to remind you of now is the story arcs and story mountains we've made so far this year. Okay, we've done a few, and I want to show you just again what it looks like. Okay, so if we think about the thief of always, okay, the thief of always. Here we could have external arc or external quest, and then internal. Okay, so Harvey is making this progression from left to right through the story, and there's something going on outside of him, but there's also a conflict inside. So there's a quest, a journey that he's on, right? And in the beginning, okay, we can say that he's home in his room. Okay, he's bored. But for bored, we're going to put that bored down in internal because this is how he feels. Okay, and I'm going to put feels here. Okay, he's bored. He's kind of gloomy. He's in his room. It's raining, right? So that's what's going on around him. Inside, he feels bored. Then he gets visited by Rictus. Okay, Rictus visit. And inside of him, he's thinking of taking a chance. And after that time with Rictus, he's thinking about, he's wishing. He wishes Rictus would come back. Okay, so Rictus is gone for about a week, and he eventually returns. And during that time, Harvey was hoping that he would come back, because he wants to be freed from this boring existence that he's living. Okay, so Rictus comes back. They leave the house, and they walk towards the holiday house. They walk through the town. Okay, and here we see that Harvey is kind of hopeful. He's also kind of worried. He's unsure of what's going to happen, right? In his head, remember, he's keeping track of landmarks along the way in case he has to run home. Later in the story, we learn that doesn't help him much because 31 years have passed. But on his way there, that's what's going on inside of him, right? Additionally, when he gets in there, right, he's filled with happiness and joy. Okay, but he also has some. He's also worried a bit. Okay, so when he calls home, for example, so he calls home, enters house. Okay, he calls home, and here he feels relieved when he talks to his parents because he was worried, right? He's worried about mom and dad. He's worried about school. Okay, so if we were to continue, right, and this actually isn't very accurate here. I think it's more like these are still going up, right? If we were to continue, okay, we could follow along this quest that's going on outside Harvey and then also inside Harvey. Okay, and as you'll see in the video that you watch next, this is a predictable pattern that authors have followed for thousands of years. Okay, and knowing this, it will allow us to make predictions about what's going to happen in the story. So I'd like you to watch that Ed puzzle now, and I look forward to hearing your answers. Okay, so I'll see you soon.